With one special exam ending, Mashima-sensei immediately announces the beginning of the next special exam. The third years will be divided into 10 groups, each of which will contain all 4 classes plus a supervisor, and their goal is to earn tokens over the next 4 days. The first group to reach the destination earns a 100% multiplier and 100,000 private points, while each subsequent group earns less and less. Class points will be rewarded based on each class leader's placement, though an additional 100 class points will be rewarded to whichever student earns the most tokens. However, whichever student finishes with the fewest tokens will be immediately expelled, and the first student whose token count hits 0 will also be expelled. Lastly, any student who fails to finish the exam will lose 5 class points. Everyone's school-issued watch contains their token count, and anyone may spend 1 token to make a phone call or check the GPS location of another student. Now, tokens are transferable, but only tokens you earn yourself count toward individual rewards. They'll begin with at least 2 tokens, and we learn Ayanokoji has 11 while Hashimoto has 9, which makes them suspect their starting tokens has to do with how long they survived in the previous special exam. With the explanation over, Morishita arrives and is ignored as Ayanokoji instead asks Nishikawa about the cruise ship. It's revealed that the first and second years underwent a special exam, though she's unsure of the results. Shiraishi then admits to being exhausted from the previous exam, followed by them discussing their groups. It turns out Ayanokoji is less than thrilled to be grouped with Morishita, who warns him not to act too friendly. She'd really hate for people to think they were dating. They're joined by Yoshida and Sanada, along with 12 more people from different classes. Notably, we have Katsuragi, Ibuki, Kushida, Michan, plus the dating couple Ike and Shinohara, who actually approach Ayanokoji wishing to set aside their past conflicts. Ignoring them, Ayanokoji instead addresses Kushida and Michan, saying he's happy to be grouped with them, especially Kushida, whose unrivaled social skills will be super helpful. Ike and Shinohara are obviously annoyed, and Ayanokoji simply states they weren't worth greeting. A pissed off Ike shouts from behind him. Overall, their group is solid, but Ayanokoji would have preferred to be in the same group as Ryun. While Ayanokoji is confident he can prevent any classmates from finishing last, he has no way to interfere if Ryun deliberately targets someone. Taking a glance around, Ayanokoji finds himself staring at Hiyori. Something about being with her just feels different, and he wonders what it would feel like to lose her. Over at her group, Horikita is greeted by Ichinose, and they agree to work together to achieve first place. However, Ichinose makes it clear that she refuses to let anyone from her class be expelled, which prompts Horikita to wonder if she's okay with expelling an enemy. Of course, the old Ichinose would say no, but now she'll no longer hold back against the other classes. With that, they agree to cooperate, and Ichinose steps away. Now alone, Horikita remembers that Sudo suspects there might be a traitor within their class, just as her eyes drift to Ayanokoji. A short distance away, Kaneda asks what's troubling Ryun, which he reveals to be his inability to beat or slow down Ayanokoji. They really can't afford another loss, and at that moment he spots Ayanokoji off in the distance. Actually, he seems to be staring at someone, and tracing his line of sight, Ryun clearly sees who that person is. Snapping back to the group, Harada declares he's willing to help them win first place, as long as Ryun agrees not to expel anyone. It turns out Harada is going to be an unexpected pain in his side, so Ryun tells him to first prove his cooperation. At 5 p.m., their supervisor introduces himself and explains there will be individual team and group tasks. Each class must choose a representative who will be responsible for distributing all the tokens for team and group tasks. Huh? The representative could just hoard the reward for themselves, and the supervisor states that behavior is discouraged. Shinohara volunteers to be the representative for Class A, however Kushida was going to volunteer as well. Shinohara wonders if she's not trusted, but Kushida turns to Ike, causing him to say Kikyo-chan wouldn't be a bad representative. A sharp tug of his ear changes his attitude, and Kushida reluctantly agrees to Shinohara being the representative. So with a few more discussions, the representatives will be Shinohara, Katsuragi, Ayanokoji, and Amikura. Though Katsuragi makes it very clear, he will distribute tokens to Class B based on contribution, not an even split. With the reps chosen, the supervisor begins the first task, which is for the group to vote on their destination. Voting for the winning location earns you 1 token, but if it's unanimous, they will all earn 2. If you vote for a destination that loses, you earn 3 tokens, and if you're the only vote for a destination, you earn 5. However, if it turns out to be a tie, then all those voters are nothing. Possible destinations are as shown, and they're told the future tasks will not change based on this decision. A large portion of them immediately offer up the nearest location with a majority vote. However, Michan points out that people will try to vote for a losing location to earn more tokens. After a lot more bickering, Katsuragi offers up the idea of pooling all their winnings and distributing them evenly, but Ike can't trust the other classes, especially the traitor Ayanokoji. Since nobody can agree, Ayanokoji declares a 4-3-3-3-3 voting pattern offers the highest reward, and equally spreads it among the classes. Ayanokoji then directly asks for Kushida and Michan's opinion. Ike complains he's being ignored, and is bluntly told Ayanokoji doesn't care for his opinion. Cutting in, Katsuragi declares that was too far, but it's just logical that Kushida and Michan are better suited to represent Class A. With that, Kushida asks Ayanokoji to apologize, and he immediately turns saying he's sorry, which only fuels Shinohara's growing rage. With a bit more discussion, they choose the nearest location of B9, and the voting goes perfectly according to plan. Upon arrival, they set up camp for the night, where Ike tells Ayanokoji to keep his distance, and that he won't be expelled so easily. Katsuragi tries to defuse the situation, though to be fair, Ayanokoji can't disagree with how Ike's feeling. Inside their tent, Yoshida asks what was with Ayanokoji's attitude today toward Ike and Shinohara. Mostly dodging the question, Ayanokoji and Yoshida instead spend some time testing how to transfer tokens. During dinner, Ayanokoji asks to speak with Kushida privately, where she immediately blows up on him for repeatedly singling her out today. Not only is it exhausting, but his actions are also pissing off Shinohara, who in turn is taking her anger out on Kushida. The topic then changes to Ayanokoji becoming the leader of Class C, followed by her mentioning there's a lot of rumors going around about him. Well, it's been nice to drop her facade for a moment, but Kushida must get back to her class. And as she leaves, we learn that Ayanokoji has been purposely fueling the conflict between Shinohara and Kushida, because he's not planning to let the last place expulsion happen by chance. It's already time for their second task. The group must vote on a popular person to gain 5 tokens. Everyone who votes for the winner will earn 2 tokens, but if there's a tie, no tokens will be rewarded. They also have to vote on an unpopular person to lose half their tokens rounded up, and if there's a tie, multiple people will lose half their tokens. Leading the discussion, Ayanokoji volunteers Kushida as the popular person, followed by Ike agreeing. Shinohara, however, accuses Kushida of working with the traitor Ayanokoji. Ike thinks that's too far, and is scolded by his girlfriend for always fawning over Kushida. Next, Katsuragi declares the popular person is just a title, and nothing in the rule states it has to be a socially popular person. Thus, Class B collectively refuses to vote for a Class A student. Ibuki suggests the voting should be a free-for-all. No, that would just result in a tie. Shinohara points out that Kushida is trustworthy, and will happily help anybody who's struggling in the future. So without a better option, the group reluctantly agrees. Now the unpopular vote is brought up, resulting in total silence. A discussion will turn ugly, and it doesn't look like anyone wants to volunteer, so maybe it's best if we just vote as we please. Shinohara quickly agrees with that, but Ayanokoji is aware they only want this because it's fair to assume he's the most unpopular person at the moment. Well, as the popular person, Kushida will earn 3 more tokens than everyone else, so Ayanokoji would like to volunteer his class for the unpopular person, but in return he wants Kushida to transfer 2 of her winnings to his class. Ike tries exclaiming it's unreasonable, but mathematically, Kushida will still earn 1 more token than everyone else, and due to the earnings of the previous task, the unpopular person will still be at a net loss. Ike still feels like it's a trap, but the group as a whole agrees to vote Yoshida as the unpopular person. However, what the other classes didn't know is that Yoshida had already transferred all but 1 of his tokens to Ayanokoji, so his 1 token will be halved to 1, plus 2 more from Kushida. FYI, there is 4 members of each class in Ayanokoji's group for this exam. However, the Class D students have done nothing noteworthy, hence why they're not being mentioned at all. Also, the book skips the majority of tasks for the special exam, and I will be skipping an additional 2. As always, I encourage you to read the book for yourself if you want all the details. The next morning, Ayanokoji steps out of his tent to find Katsuragi. They discuss the unavoidable penalty of the last place student being expelled, and Katsuragi believes this is why Ayanokoji has been harassing Ike and Shinohara. At the very least, they should be able to work together, but Ayanokoji states they think too differently. You see, Katsuragi just wants to save his classmates, while Ayanokoji could care less about classmates and instead only cares about those he deems worthy. Even though Katsuragi can understand that point of view, he's still disappointed to hear it. After breakfast, the first task for today will be a straightforward academic test. There's 6 rounds of different subjects, and as you'd expect, Ibuki, Shinohara, and Ike consistently finish in last place. Once the academic test concludes, the class leaders are given the tokens to distribute. A pissed off Ibuki demands to know why she was only given 2 tokens. As previously discussed, Katsuragi distributed tokens based on performance, and seeing as she earned 0 tokens this task, she's lucky to have been given any at all. She accuses him of wanting her to be expelled, and is reminded that if he were to favor her, it would equally harm their classmates Sanada and Morofuji. On the cruise ship, Nanase has invited Amasawa to a private pool. Apparently, during the cruise ship special exam, Nanase tried to expel Amasawa's classmate Ishigami, but he retaliated and expelled Nanase's classmate instead. She reveals Ishigami is connected to the White Room, and Amasawa suddenly perks up. Pulling out a second phone, Nanase passes it over, which has a detailed biography of how Ishigami is connected to Ayanokoji's father. That's interesting because Amasawa never noticed Ishigami doing anything suspicious. Nanase declares Ishigami to be better than Amasawa and Yagami, at least in his investigation skills. Who is Nanase really, and how does she have this information? Well, she's unable to share everything, but she admits her original goal was to expel Ayanokoji. However, her new objective is to defeat Ayanokoji's father. To do this, she needs to steal Ayanokoji away from him by causing a change of heart. To that end, Nanase asks Amasawa to become her ally, and to continue the mission if Nanase gets expelled. Well, Amasawa only wants to support Ayanokoji, not change him, and even though she's been cast out, she still doesn't hate the White Room. Bluntly, Nanase declares the White Room will never accept her return, and that her biological father has racked up massive debt, and is currently looking to sell off his young and beautiful daughter, Ichika Amasawa. Another page on Nanase's phone details all of this, including the atrocities that a young girl like Amasawa will be forced to endure overseas. Even Amasawa can't hide her emotions at this revelation, followed by Nanase saying her backers might be able to save Amasawa from this fate. Amasawa still isn't sure how much she believes, but she needs time to think things over. The previous 2 hours were filled with numerous exhausting tasks. Sanada can't believe Ayanokoji won every single individual event, and Yoshida is grateful Ayanokoji went easy on them when they were enemies. Michan then calls Ayanokoji over and reveals that Shinohara is refusing to give Kushida her share of the tokens. You know, that's sensitive class information, but it's true it may become a group issue. Apparently, Shinohara is pissed because her boyfriend can't take his eyes off of Kushida. They assume the root cause is the unanimous special exam, when Kushida revealed her true self and called Shinohara ugly in front of everyone. For now, Ayanokoji just asks Michan to keep him informed, but if worse comes to worst, Ayanokoji will contact Horikita. As the grueling day continues, Ibuki grows increasingly frustrated at her inability to earn a single token, putting her in dead last alongside Kushida. Suddenly, the supervisor says there's an incoming call for Kushida, which turns out to be Horikita, and this only pisses off Shinohara since Horikita chose to call a class traitor instead of her. A bit later, our group stumbles upon another group, and to their surprise, the supervisor says it's mere coincidence, so they're welcome to mingle. While catching up with the other Class C students, Hasabe asks Ayanokoji if they can talk. Ayanokoji wonders if she feels guilty, and yes she does, but Hasabe prefers this over Ayanokoji being expelled. You know, she'd really like to call him by his nickname again, and would enjoy hanging out after this exam. Kyopon suspects that Miyaki and Yukimura don't feel the same way, so they agree to hang out with just the 2 of them sometime. While setting up camp that evening, a call comes in for Ayanokoji. It's Nishikawa, and she's apparently worried about Shiraishi possibly falling behind in tokens. Well, he doesn't recommend it, but she's welcome to pay a token to call Shiraishi herself, but that's met with numerous complaints. Ayanokoji reminds her that Shiraishi is a strong student, and Nishikawa admits she'd be willing to sacrifice a classmate in order to save Shiraishi. She believes Ayanokoji is brutal enough to do that, but he states it's his job as class leader to avoid that situation entirely. Suddenly, she accuses Ayanokoji of being a spy for Class A, but he can earn her trust by contacting Shiraishi. It's perfectly understandable for the class to doubt him, however, he's not contacting Shiraishi. After the call ends, Morishita mentions he's been giving Kushida a lot of attention lately, and even suspects he's in love. Not confirming or denying, he simply states he knows Kushida very well, and as such is confident in her skills to help manage the group. Yoshida interrupts them, as it's become public that Shinohara is refusing to give Kushida her share of the tokens. As the group gathers, Shinohara deems this a class strategy, so it's none of their business. It's causing issues for the group though, and Ayanokoji simply deems her a bully, and wonders how Horikita would react if she found out. Stepping face to face, Ike defends his girlfriend, as Shinohara points out Katsuragi is doing something similar to Ibuki. However, the difference is that Shinohara is hoarding the tokens unfairly. Look, it's their strategy to hold them until the end and then redistribute them as needed. If that's true, then why doesn't Kushida seem to believe that? And Shinohara throws Ibuki's unhappy situation back at him. A few more tasks come and go before Ayanokoji approaches Kushida. Ike exclaims Class A doesn't trust him, and Shinohara warns Kushida this would look like a betrayal, so Kushida denies talking. Returning to his class, Yoshida wonders why he's so fixated on Kushida, causing Morishita to cut in, saying it's about time the boys noticed Ayanokoji's romantic feelings. Of course, that's not the truth, but Ayanokoji is glad everyone is noticing his unusual behavior. As the third day begins, they're met by 4 back-to-back group versus group tasks. At lunchtime, Kushida is sitting alone away from her class, causing Yoshida to say Shinohara has crossed the line. Morishita declares Ike's obvious infatuation for Kushida to be the reason. What do you expect? Kushida and Shiraishi are on a different level. Morishita deems him absolute trash. Another call arrives for Ayanokoji, and it's Nishikawa asking for the same thing as the day before. Though after hanging up, Ayanokoji spends 1 token to make a call himself. Upon returning, he admits to calling someone, and Morishita exclaims he's finally made his move. Yes, it's true, he's shot an arrow, but he's going to keep his plan a secret. It's the final night of the exam, and Class A sets up their tents further away than normal. Standing alone, Michan catches Ayanokoji's eye, and upon approaching we learn Michan is standing guard, since Kushida and Shinohara are arguing. In order to not get Michan in trouble, Ayanokoji backs away and sneaks through the woods to get a view of the situation. Unexpectedly, he finds Kushida bowing, knees and head in the dirt, though someone else is approaching, so Ayanokoji decides to leave. A few moments earlier, Shinohara accused Kushida of telling the group she wasn't given her tokens. They argue back and forth, prompting Ike to state they don't have proof that Kikyo told anyone. This traitor embarrassed his girlfriend by calling her ugly in front of the class, so why is Ike defending her so much? Ike struggles to give an acceptable response, followed by Shinohara wondering which guys Kushida will sweet-talk into saving her. Doesn't matter anyway. They can't trust Kushida anymore, so she won't be given any more tokens. Look, all Kushida wants is her fair share of the tokens, but Shinohara already told her she's just holding them for adjustments. Besides, this is only happening because Kushida called her ugly in front of everyone, and humbly Kushida agrees this all stems from her previous outburst. Hearing this, Shinohara admits her actions are a bit unreasonable, before ordering Kushida to bow face down to the dirt. A moment later, Kushida, with knees on the ground, face in the dirt, begs Shinohara. Well, since Kushida is being such a good girl, Shinohara agrees to share her tokens, but not until they're standing at the finish line. Growing nervous, Ike states this is just bullying at this point, causing his girlfriend to lash out, scolding him once again. Ibuki asks the hell is going on here, and she reveals to knowing Kushida's true personality. Not knowing what to do, Ike and Shinohara walk away, followed by Kushida declaring she's just doing what she has to do to survive this exam. Ibuki wonders if she has any pride. Pride doesn't matter as long as Kushida has 1 more token than Ibuki. Turning to leave, Kushida asks if Ibuki's really just going to give up. But hey, if Ibuki gives up, that makes it easier for Kushida. Pissed off, she went out of her way to help Kushida. Ibuki is now completely alone. However, no matter how hard she thinks, she's unable to come up with a solution. You know, maybe she's just not suited for this school. Shinohara thanks Michan for keeping Ayanokoji away before receiving a call from Horikita, only because she forced Kushida to tell Horikita to call her instead. Taking this opportunity, Kushida stands directly behind Ike, gently caressing the bottom of his shirt. She's so worried Shinohara won't share the tokens, but you know, maybe if Ike rescues her, Kushida will do anything he wants. Stepping away just as Shinohara ends the call, they're told that Ayanokoji is plotting something big. Due to the way Class A is acting, Ayanokoji can tell Horikita caught the arrow he shot, and he's pleased to see she's grown. He then asks Yoshida to join him, and they approach Kushida, who agrees to talk. Immediately telling Yoshida to leave, he departs. Kushida angrily deems that a dirty move to bring Yoshida like that. They discuss her current situation and how Ike's blatant lust for her is making her sick. Next, she blames Ayanokoji for putting her in this predicament by praising her so much at the start of this exam. Kushida's only remaining lifeline is Ike, and she'll even let Ike cop a feel if needed, even though that didn't work on Ayanokoji. Hell, if Ike isn't enough to save her, then she'll even resort to sweetening up Yoshida and Sanada. Just to be clear, Ayanokoji isn't willing to save her, right? He jokingly asks if her body is on the table for him too. Absolutely not. Kushida walks away. The final morning of the exam, Ibuki wakes up to a noise and glimpses Kushida disappearing in the distance. Following, they come to the ocean, where Kushida mutters this is so damn irritating, but she'll figure this out even if she must call Horikita. She falls face first into the water. Obviously, Kushida is pissed, but due to the pain, she can't stand on her own. Outstretching a hand, Ibuki is yanked into the water beside her. This devolves into a splashing battle and ends with both girls drenched but laughing. Ibuki, who's almost certainly in last place, tells Kushida she has no reason to worry. Kushida doubts Katsuragi will actually abandon her, but Ibuki isn't so certain. Hey, it's not her fault she had to compete against Ayanokoji multiple times, though it does feel weird to just give up. There's always the possibility that another group is doing worse than Ibuki, though it is very reassuring to have Ibuki behind her. Then just before walking away, Kushida tells Ibuki not to give up hope just yet. However, Ibuki feels completely hollow, with absolutely no urge to fight. At 5 p.m., the group is located in F7, and the supervisor announces their final task is to reach the goal at F13 by 7 p.m. They're reminded that upon entering the goal for 30 seconds, their tokens will be finalized and unable to make any transfers. Each class leader is then given a phone, which functions as a GPS and allows them to spend tokens to call other students. Ryun can't stop thinking about the end of this exam, since he's likely 20 to 30 tokens behind Ayanokoji. In order to make up the difference, their group needs to finish first, while also causing Ayanokoji's group to finish 5th or later. Guess he really doesn't have any other choice. Needing to make a call, Ryun forces Kaneda to spend the token. Sheena answers, and upon hearing her voice, Ryun hesitates, unable to speak. The silence is all she needs to understand they're going to lose, and she calmly asks what she should do. Upon hearing the orders, Kaneda goes pale, and Sheena states that if she's expelled, Ryun better not save her using his large accumulation of private points. He needs those points to enact his grand plan. Passing through G7, the phone rings for Ayanokoji. Apparently, Ryun knows he won't win this exam, so he ordered a certain classmate to reduce their tokens to 1 and walk away from the goal to K14. Using Sheena as a decoy is an interesting strategy, however her expulsion only benefits Class C. You know, Sheena made him promise not to buy her back, and that Ryun is well aware she's someone special to Ayanokoji. Too bad they miscalculated, because Ayanokoji declares to have no intention of saving her. A pissed off Kaneda can't believe they're risking Sheena, and grabs Ryun's shirt, shouting he's never been this angry before. Well, Ryun wouldn't have chosen this plan if there was a better option, and Harada admits he's interested to see how Ayanokoji will respond. Still, this isn't worth the risk, and Ryun declares Kaneda is avoiding the truth. Upon thinking back to how Sheena smiles around Ayanokoji, Kaneda is forced to realize. Look, Ryun is well aware Kaneda can't get to Sheena in time, and even if Kaneda reduced his own tokens to 1, Sheena would still be expelled in the tie for having a lower OAA score. So even though Kaneda holds a protection point, he's completely powerless in this situation. The only way Sheena can be saved is for Ayanokoji to rescue her, though Ryun isn't confident Ayanokoji will take the bait. Upon reaching the goal, Yoshida signals to back up for one final check of their tokens, and Ayanokoji confidently states 51 is the number needed not to be expelled. Ike and Shinohara deem him a liar, but Ayanokoji reveals Ibuki only has 50, and that Katsuragi has been working with him. Shocked, Ibuki wants to know how long this has been planned, prompting Shinohara to exclaim she knew Ayanokoji and Katsuragi were working together from the very beginning. This earns her a bit of honest praise from Ayanokoji, as he didn't reveal their cooperation to anyone in this group. However, going back in time, on the 3rd day, Ayanokoji did call Ichinose and asked Horikita to listen as well. He explained his plan to expel Ibuki, and promises to inform everyone of her token count. That way, nobody important is expelled by accident. As expected, Ichinose easily accepts this, followed by Ayanokoji threatening that if Horikita tries to interfere, then he will change his target to a Class A student instead. And since this call was technically for Ichinose, Horikita isn't allowed to respond. Immediately asking Sakagami to call Ayanokoji back, Ichinose cuts in, saying his plan also helps our classes. Still, Horikita can't accept him choosing who should be expelled. However, their supervisor, Sakagami-sensei, states it's all well within the rules. He even admits he doesn't want Ibuki expelled since she's part of his class. However, the only way Horikita can stop Ayanokoji is to choose someone different to expel. Ichinose understands her want to protect a friend, but suggests for Horikita to stop and think about this. You know, something about the situation doesn't feel right. Wait, what if Ayanokoji lied about who his target is? With a laugh, Ibuki exclaims Katsuragi is really abandoning her, which he deems to be a tactical sacrifice. She's well aware of her shortcomings, but if she's going to be expelled, she wants to punch Ayanokoji at least one time. Surprisingly, he accepts. Ibuki steps back, declaring he can't back out now. With a brief pause, Ayanokoji agrees, followed by a shout and a loud thwack of flesh and bone colliding. You know, he could at least pretend it hurt, followed by Katsuragi saying it's time to finish this exam. Interrupting, Shinohara exclaims this whole situation is way too suspicious. You see, Horikita warned her about this, so Shinohara wants to see Ibuki's token count for herself. Ibuki refuses, so Shinohara offers to give her just enough tokens to pass Kushida. Well aware Shinohara is just trying to calm her own anxieties, Ibuki refuses again, only for Shinohara to say she doesn't feel safe, so can't risk giving any tokens to Kushida. Reluctantly, Ibuki shows her watch, which confirms her token count to be 50. As a thank you, Shinohara begins to transfer 5 tokens to Ibuki. Kushida cuts in saying, "You know I only have 54. Now pissed off, Ibuki demands to know if Shinohara was really trying to expel her own classmate. With everyone watching, Shinohara finally transfers tokens to Kushida, but after seeing the amount, Kushida is confused. Refusing Shinohara's 5 tokens, Ibuki says I'm done here and begins walking into the goal. Suddenly, Kushida grabs Ibuki's wrist and shouts she's unable to trust that ugly bitch Shinohara. Clarifying, Kushida deems Shinohara's face, body, and personality all to be an ugly bitch. Obviously, Shinohara flies into a rage, and Kushida begins pulling Ibuki to the finish line. Katsuragi tries to stop them, but Kushida isn't allowing anyone to save Ibuki. It turns out Shinohara only transferred 10 of the 34 tokens she owed to Kushida, and Kushida forces Ibuki to accept half of those, just in case someone else has less. In front of everyone, Shinohara exclaims Kushida has a disgusting personality, and you know what? Kushida agrees with that. However, even with a disgusting personality, Ike was practically drooling when Kushida offered to do anything in exchange for his help. Appearing from nowhere, Koenji is happy that's finally over, as he didn't want to interrupt. Gently forcing Michan to step away, he checks her token count, before transferring a not insignificant amount of tokens to her before escorting Michan to the finish. It's 8 in the evening and the exam is concluded. Hashimoto doubts Ayanokoji made the correct choice, and Yoshida says it's hard to tell if Class A won or lost the exam. Class A won the class and group reward, earning them plus 200 class points. However, Shinohara being expelled from coming in last place is definitely hurting their morale. Ike is so upset he didn't even come to dinner. Hashimoto wants to know what Ayanokoji did to cause that, but Horikita just arrived, asking to speak with him. Stepping outside, Ayanokoji begins recounting the second morning of the exam. There was the discussion with Katsuragi, but as he walked away, Ayanokoji revealed his plan to expel Ibuki. This would mean a declaration of war, but Ayanokoji thinks they'll be able to work together. They just need Katsuragi to purposely withhold Ibuki's tokens, so their group will see Ibuki struggling. Huh? How would that benefit his class? Oh, Ibuki is just going to be a decoy. Exactly. The real target is Class A. Horikita thought it was suspicious that Ibuki was struggling so hard, and she even warned Shinohara of this. Indeed, however, during the final confrontation, they had Sanada secretly slip the necessary tokens to Kushida, who then slipped a large sum of tokens to Ibuki just as they crossed the finish line. Ayanokoji compliments Horikita for noticing his bluff, and even states Shinohara did a great job by checking Ibuki's token count with her own eyes. This leaves the question as to why he didn't target Kushida or Michan instead. He claims to having gone after the easiest target, though in reality, his goal is to make Class A stronger. So when it comes down to it, Class A can blame Ayanokoji for Shinohara's expulsion. Incorrect. Kushida declares she made the choice. At the end, she could have kept Ibuki's tokens for herself, but she chose to hand them over so Shinohara would be expelled. Though personally, she would have preferred Ike to be the one gone. Honestly, it was a gamble to trust her, but Ayanokoji doesn't believe that, as he purposely fueled the conflict between Kushida and Shinohara for that reason. A moment later, Ayanokoji is left alone with his thoughts, which are currently being dominated by Shina. Near the end of the exam, Ayanokoji tells Yoshida he's going to save Shina. Wait, that doesn't benefit the class at all, so Ayanokoji asks how far Yoshida would go to rescue Shiraishi. Well shit, Yoshida can't argue with that, but if Shina only has 1 token, Ayanokoji might end up in last place after saving her. In order to prevent that, Yoshida transfers some tokens to Ayanokoji, and even convinces Sanada and Morishida to do the same, though they're not told the reason. Sheena didn't actually think he'd come. This plan was just a last-ditch effort because they couldn't think of anything better. Honestly, her being expelled would have benefited his class, which causes her to ask why he came. Probably because he wanted to experience making a mistake. No, that's incorrect. Ayanokoji simply wants to spend every additional second with her that he can. It's conceited, but Sheena really wanted to believe that there was the smallest chance Ayanokoji would rescue her. She's so unbelievably happy that it actually happened. Confidently, Ayanokoji declares he's fully aware that he's in love with her. Within that literal second of silence, yet feels like an eternity, his throat tightens and he grows anxious, awaiting her response. Sheena is so sorry for being bait, but she's in love with him as well. With that, Ayanokoji transfers the necessary tokens, and they begin holding hands. The loud, distant horn of the cruise ship signals the end of the special exam, but also signals the beginning of this new relationship. Will Ayanokoji change and learn how to love properly? And if he does, will he later decide to let her go? Seeking knowledge, experience, memories. Everything Ayanokoji does is solely for his own selfish reasons. Ichinose heard Ayanokoji threw away victory in order to save Hiyori, but that's probably just because he wants all 4 classes to be strong. Though after witnessing Ayanokoji lovingly take Hiyori's hand to help her down from the rescue boat, the truth sets in. You know, Ichinose thought Karuizawa was the obstacle standing between her and Ayanokoji, but in reality, that obstacle was actually Sheena Hiyori.